Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? It's been over a year since my last one, so it's time for Q&A number 3. Alright, so let's get this one rolling. First question from Bob. What are your thoughts on console mods that are not reversible? Well, to me, it really comes down to whether the console getting modded is in really good condition or not. I think as time goes on, we're going to see fewer and fewer consoles that are in like perfect condition, where there's no yellowing, no damage, no cracks, no scuffs, no scrapes, anything like that. And so there's always going to be a certain percentage of the population that's going to want perfect consoles like that. I think it's important for us to keep at least some of them in good shape. But if you've got a console that's damaged in some way, like it's just not working and you have to mod it to get it working again, or the casing is all sorts of busted up or discolored or whatever, well, I'd say go for it, because otherwise you're just going to kind of waste a console. All right, next question. What is your favorite generation of gaming? That one's kind of tough. My first reaction is to say the 16-bit era, because the first game console I ever owned was a Sega Genesis, but I also have quite an affinity for the Super NES. But at the same time, my favorite console game is Mario 64, so that has me thinking along the lines of the Nintendo 64 and the original PlayStation, which also has a lot of titles that I'm very fond of. So kind of both of those, I guess you could say. All right, two questions that are very similar here. Sam asks if I have any hobbies or interests that extend beyond technology and gaming that just don't come up because of the channel's theme and subscriber base. Nolan from over on Patreon asks a very similar question. Do I enjoy doing less tech-related DIY projects around the house? The answer is yes. And actually, the limit on what I can do for this channel is probably the biggest frustration I have with running a YouTube channel and making videos. There's so much other stuff that I'd love to show you, but I kind of learned my lesson with the podcast episode where we went to the Twin Cities Auto Show and everyone hated it and not very many people watched it and I got a lot of crap over it. So I kind of feel pigeonholed in that way. I do have plenty of other hobbies though. I'm an avid runner. I do a lot of DIY kind of stuff, both home improvement and working on the car. It's been a long time, but I used to be really involved in music. I took piano lessons when I was young, learned to play the drums. I actually own a guitar and a bass guitar back there, kind of hiding by the closet. I haven't had any time to learn them though. Maybe I'll get into it again someday. If a whole bunch of free time, appears, then maybe I'll start another channel about some of that stuff. I don't know. All right, a question from Tiffany here on YouTube saying that basically she's noticed that the video gaming hobby tech industry is very largely male dominated. And the question is, do you think we'll ever see that change to include more women? And what are some ways to encourage or welcome some female influence into it? Of course, this is a topic that's probably worthy of its very own podcast episode, and I might get to that at some point. One thing that I do want to note right out front, though, is I feel that gaming and technology are for everyone. They should be open and welcome to everyone. We should use those to unite us and not divide us. I also think, though, that there are actually more women involved in gaming and tech than we necessarily realize. I think it's really more a matter of perception or communication. The internet has become this thing where all the resources that you go to find out information or communicate about these kind of topics are very male dominated. And I think that puts a lot of women off from wanting to join in on those conversations. So if there's any one thing that we can do to help, I think it's to try and make those communities, whether they are online forums or chat rooms or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube comments, all these various places, if we can try to get those to be more welcoming environments for everyone to communicate, I think that'll go a very long way. Sam asks, basically, how do I find time to do my videos with work and everything else that comes with day-to-day life? So the short answer is I just make it happen. I'm very deadline driven. that doesn't, mean to say I won't procrastinate here and there, but because I've got all of you to answer to and these self-imposed deadlines that I have set for myself, like trying to do a podcast episode every week and getting one of my, kind of more regular Tuesday videos out every other week, I just, have this drive to just get it done. And whether I can get that done ahead of time and free up time for myself later for personal stuff, or whether I procrastinate and kind of run it all out until the last minute, in some ways that doesn't really matter as long as I get the video out. A lot of it also comes down to figuring out what I can commit to and what I can't. Sometimes I have to turn down video ideas or proposals just because I know they're going to be way too much for me to be able to get done in what time I have, and vice versa. Sometimes I've had to turn down personal commitments simply because I knew I wouldn't be able to meet the schedule that I want to meet. Similar question from Bobby on YouTube. How much time a week do I dedicate to my channel? I don't have any set hours for, when I work on certain stuff. I've kind of fallen into a bit of a rhythm as to what days of the week I'll work on certain things. I do have a full-time job, so I'm doing all of my YouTube stuff in my personal time, basically just nights and weekends. But, I work on YouTube stuff in one way or another every day. Whether that's actively working on a video or writing a script or editing, shooting footage, doing voiceover, filming a podcast, or even as simple as going through comments or working on Twitter, Instagram, any of that kind of stuff. I'm working on it pretty much every day. The podcasts are obviously a lot quicker for me to produce. It's just a few hours worth of work every week. That is to say, it's several hours to get these done. It's not just pressing record on the camera and then when I'm done, I upload it straight to the channel. There's still post-production involved. My larger scale kind of Tuesday videos generally take anywhere between, I'd like to say 16 and 32 hours worth of work per episode. It's not an insignificant amount. Another question, what's a good way to display your collection of retro games or consoles? I hate having them in a box in a closet. Well, if you've got a lot of space at home, the direct and easy answer is set aside a so-called man cave, or your own kind of home arcade type of deal, where you've got like a home theater set up and a bunch of shelves and all your consoles out and wired up. A YouTuber that comes to mind is Metal Jesus Rocks. He kind of has his basement set up like that. The wiring by nature kind of turns into a bit of a rat's nest, and you need to keep the consoles covered, otherwise they get all nasty, dusty, and gross and everything. But if you've got the room to spare, that's one way to do it. Personally, for me, sad to say, I keep them in boxes in the closet. I just don't have the time to play them all the time. So I really kind of go through phases where I'm really into one console for a while, and then I kind of fall out of that and want to get into another one. So just storing them in like plastic storage bins in the closet has worked the best for me. All right, Kyle from Patreon asks, how does your wife feel about your channel, hobbies, and rising YouTube fame? Well, to start, I don't really feel like I'm famous, and I think fame in quotation marks on YouTube is very much different than fame like you would see from someone who's in movies or on TV or whatever. And I think it's just a matter of scale. Obviously YouTube channels are much, much more narrow than things like TV and movies. So there are lots and lots of people on YouTube who I guess you could call YouTube famous, but most people would never have heard of them. They wouldn't recognize them on the street, that sort of thing. Whereas there are plenty of like actors and musicians and stuff who you've heard of and know their name and probably even know what they look like, even if you've never been familiar with their work, never seen one of their movies or heard any of their music, that sort of thing. So I think there's kind of a big difference in famous there. My wife, she's cool with the channel and everything. Obviously, she supports me. She, is very patient when like I'm, out somewhere with her and I want to get footage of something. You'll see some of this in an upcoming video where like I was on vacation and I needed to shoot some footage of stuff. She's always been very patient and understands how important this whole thing is to me. That said, she's just not that huge into it herself. which I'm okay with because, you know, this is more than anything else like a second job and not so much a hobby anymore. And, you know, if you ever talk to your own spouse, girlfriend, significant other, whoever, about your work, at some point, you know, they kind of just tune out a little bit. It's like, you know, yeah, I'm sorry you had a bad day, but I don't really care about the minutia of what's going on at your work. And it's kind of like that. I've learned that I just don't really need to get into too much detail about the inner workings of YouTube with her, because at some point it's just not that big of a deal to her. All right, do I miss the days when video game consoles just play games and weren't all-in-one devices? Yes, especially when I go to play a game and I have to sit through a software update. How did you paint that awesome wall in your room? All right, so the mural back there, Great Wave off Kanagawa by Hokusai. That mural is actually, boy, like 6 or 7 years old at this point. I may do a quick video about painting that someday. The short answer is I found a high-res image of that. I cropped it to fit the aspect ratio of the wall that I had to work with. I used an LCD projector to project that image onto the wall in sections, and then I just went along with a pencil and kind of traced out all the lines. When that was done, I painted it all freehand. All right, Vince from Patreon asking, how often do you get requests to review products that don't fit with the theme of your channel, and what are some examples? I get emails every day for people wanting to send me stuff, and sometimes they're highly personalized where you can tell they actually have watched some of the videos, and they're from some pretty big name manufacturers. Other times, I've never heard of their product. It's clear that it's just a bulk email because my name doesn't even appear anywhere in the body of the email. They're not addressing it to me. A lot of it is Bluetooth speaker kind of stuff, like kind of inexpensive accessories off of Amazon, speakers and headphones and like keyboards and mice and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I pass on a lot of those simply because I don't want to get really repetitive with doing a lot of those products. You need to have a product that's really interesting to me, that stands out for me to want to actually check it out. Do I get occasionally sent an email about products that have nothing to do with the channel? Yes. The most bizarre one that I've gotten, I think I've actually gotten it a couple of times, is something to do with like beauty products. I don't know. I kind of started reading it and then they mentioned like beauty products and I'm just like, yeah, nope, delete. All right, Emmett from YouTube asking, do I think there will ever be a new console from a new games company, or is the console hardware industry coming to an end? I don't think the hardware industry as we know it is going to come to an end. That said, I don't think we're going to see any new manufacturers start up their own thing with regard to dedicated console gaming. The closest thing we're going to get are things like, you know, how Apple got into gaming a bit with the Apple TV or the Nvidia Shield or the Ouya or something like that, where it's not necessarily like a, you know, real big powerhouse AAA monster kind of game console like, you know, the Switch or PS4 or Xbox One type of class of hardware where it's really more of a set-top box type of a thing. I don't think we're going to see any more manufacturers really get into that big heavy hitter kind of category. But I don't think we're at the end of that category yet either. All right, what paid or free video editing software do I recommend for aspiring content creators? You know, this is almost like a religious debate amongst YouTubers and content creators. I would say it depends first on what platform you're most comfortable working with. If you have a Mac, iMovie is free. Learn to use iMovie to start. If you have a PC, there are a number of inexpensive options out there that are really good to start with. I know a lot of YouTubers got started using something like Windows Movie Maker. Sony Vegas, although I don't think it's by Sony anymore. I think they sold the product line. Vegas, I know, is a popular choice and it's not very expensive. When you start getting into more advanced editing on the Mac, I'm a Final Cut editor. I really like using Final Cut. It's just got a very quick and straightforward workflow that I like. I know there are also a lot of editors out there using Premiere, and Premiere is cross-platform, which is really nice. So if you do want to switch back and forth, if you think you want to switch to a Mac or from a Mac to a PC, at least you won't have to relearn your workflow that way. I'm just not the biggest fan of Adobe since they went to the whole Creative Cloud thing and you have to pay per month. You end up paying more for the software over the long run than if you had bought it. Whereas a copy of Final Cut is like $300 and then that's it. It's a one-time purchase. The one piece of software that I think more people need to start looking at, and I'm going to start doing some investigative work on myself, is DaVinci Resolve. The basic version of that is free. Granted, if you want to get into the really advanced stuff, it costs a decent amount of money. But I don't think most, even higher end YouTube editors are going to need to get into the, that higher end version of Resolve. And Resolve is also cross-platform. So maybe check that one out since that one's free. All right, question on YouTube, although he's one of my Twitter followers. What's it like living in Minnesota and what's the commute like every day? Yeah, if you've watched the channel for a while, you probably know that I live in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities, St. Paul metro area. I love it here. I grew up here. I've lived here my entire life. Minnesota, people who don't know it, they just claim, oh, it's a flyover state, whatever. The Twin Cities is actually really cool. We're a metro area of about 4 million people. There are a lot of like arts and culture and music and attractions, things to go do and see. We've got this ever expanding kind of food culture going on, which is really cool. If you're outdoorsy, there's lots of parks and recreation and outdoor kind of stuff that you can do. The people generally are really nice. We've got a nice mix of people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities. It's a really cool place to live. Increasing amount of tech here, companies that do tech. You've heard of Silicon Valley out in California. I've even heard the Minneapolis, St. Paul areas being referred to as the Silicon Prairie. We're starting to kind of make a bit of a name for ourselves. So I really like it. The commute, honestly, it sucks. That said, I think the commute sucks pretty much everywhere, unless by commute you like work from home, in which case your commute's never going to suck no matter where you live. Do I support the restoration and selling of retro consoles or handhelds for profit? I'm okay with it as long as you aren't like totally gouging, ripping people off in the process. And as long as by restoration, you're doing good work. If you're just going to go scavenge garage sales and find consoles and just do a quick wipe down on them and then resell them for a ridiculous amount of money just to try and drive up prices on these sorts of things, I'm not the biggest fan of that. But if you actually take the time to really clean up the console, test everything out, fix anything that needs to get fixed, and then sell it on for a decent price and then support it afterwards. If something happens, you're gonna help out the person who buys it from you, then I'm totally cool with that, because not everyone is into trying to hunt down those consoles. Not everyone is all that big into putting in the time and effort and work to restore one. So, as long as you aren't ripping people off, I'm okay with it. All right, the last question. Do I still shoot film? If yes, what cameras and film stock do you use or like? I spotted some 35mm film on your desk during one of your videos a while ago, and it got me curious. All I'm going to say for this one is stay tuned. So that's it for this Q&A. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, I do periodically answer them if you leave them in the comments of videos or hit me up on Twitter. So you don't necessarily have to wait another year to get your question answered. But in any event, if you like this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at thisdoesnotcomp. And as always, thanks for watching.